Let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all will rise if you're able. Flag is over here. Together, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. They teach us in elementary school the three things that are necessary for human survival: food, shelter, and water. Water is fundamental, right? It's probably, if you think about it, one of the most important things. So we are not only the town board, we are commissioners of the Hampton Bays Water District. We are in charge of making sure that this community is provided with safe, good drinking water. We have had an interesting year. First, let me thank the school, the Superintendent Clemenson and the Hampton Bays School District for allowing this meeting to happen here. We as commissioners field a lot of the calls from the public, and we had a lot of concerns, particularly over the past year, with water quality issues. There was issues with emerging contaminants, chemicals, they call them PFCs, perfluorinated compounds, PFOA, PFOS. The main concern is if these chemicals at certain levels can be toxic, could be obviously cause health impacts. And they started showing up in the downtown well field, the one with the big tower near the ambulance headquarters off of Pompquag Road in that area. We also had issues with low water pressure in some areas. We had issues with discolored water. Did some of you experience some discolored water over the summer? Okay, so I see a number of hands. We started getting calls. Yes, I see a sample of the water. So. And we obviously got lots of pictures of what people had in their sinks and not. We did a couple things as a town board. We commissioned a regulatory review compliance study. We brought in an engineer to a firm called Diverka and Bartolucci. They had responded to our request for proposal. They looked at the water district and all the practices of making sure they were complying with all the health department regulations. But we also started a conversation with Suffolk County Water Authority. Most of the town of Southampton is served by Suffolk County Water Authority. Some people have their own private wells, but Hampton Bays is unique. It's the one area that has its own water district. Now, some people might say, that's a great thing. We have our own water district. But people started to wonder if Suffolk County Water Authority might some sort of management capacity could increase the level of water quality. And so we started a conversation. It was actually interesting. During the early part of the summer, after we had put in filters to remove those chemicals I mentioned a moment ago, and we were trying to put them online to help alleviate the pressure issues, the low pressure and the discolored water, we had to wait for those test samples to come in. And I actually turned to Suffolk County Water Authority at that point because they had their own laboratories. And instead of having to wait 3 or 4 weeks to get the samples back to determine if we could put the wells into service, they were able to turn that sample around in a 2-day period, which was pretty extraordinary. And we started a conversation about having the Water Authority manage the Hampton Bays Water District. They submitted a proposal, and the board is looking at that proposal, and we decided to set up a couple public information meetings. This is the first of 2 to help guide us in whether this is an arrangement that makes sense. There's pros and cons. So we wanted to give you, the public, a chance to hear from the Water Authority the details of their proposal so that you can help us make an informed decision. I know we have a number of people here who are with the Hampton Bays Water District. Can you raise your hand if you're an employee of the Hampton Bays Water District? Okay, a number of people who work for the Water District. And I know they have many concerns about whether this is the right thing to do and what would happen to their jobs and their job security. And we've had meetings about that. In particular, the Water Authority has come out and met with the employees. So we also did an online survey, and some of you may have filled it out. How many of you have filled out that online survey? Okay, quite a number of you. We've had, at this point, over 300 responses to that online survey. And the results are interesting. We have copies of it, if anybody wants to see the results we have so far. And maybe I just share a couple of the things that we learned from the survey. The top two concerns people had in terms of their water was, the number one concern is water quality. I don't think anybody's too surprised. 91% said that was the most important, and 48, the second most important was reliability of the supply. Cost, interestingly, was a distant third at 38%. 62% felt that their water costs would increase with Suffolk County Water Authority. 38% thought that they would decrease or remain the same. We're going to get more information today on that issue of what the cost of water would be. 68% of those responded said they weren't aware of how much they were paying in their tax bill for water. So you actually pay in two ways. You pay in your tax bill, your property tax bill, and per gallon that you use. The average homeowner pays about $130, $132 in their tax bill. Some of you may pay less, some of you may pay more, but that's the average. The rest is in your water bill. 37% said they were not satisfied at all with the current service that they were receiving with their drinking water. 15% said they were very satisfied. So those were the two extremes. 37% saying not at all satisfied, 15% say basically completely satisfied. 39% of those surveyed support the current study, this conversation we're having with the Water Authority. 22% strongly oppose having this conversation. So again, almost twice as many feeling this is the right thing to do to have this discussion. And then we had lots of comments. There was an opportunity for comment. Over 200 comments were received. And some of those comments and questions will be answered tonight, we hope. So let me go to some introductions. First, the town board. You may know us all, but let me just go through. We have Julie Lofstad, who lives in Hampton Bays, Christine Scalera, Councilman John Bouvier, and Councilman Tommy John Scavone. Supervisor Jay Schneiderman. Jim Burke is our town attorney. We also have several members of the Water Authority, as I mentioned. We have Jeff Sabo, the CEO. Thank you, Jeff, for coming. Timothy Hopkins, General Counsel to the Suffolk County Water Authority. Joseph Picorni, Deputy CEO for Operations. Elizabeth Vasallo, Chief Financial Officer. Kevin Dirk, Director of Laboratory and Water Quality. So thank you for coming. And we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about your proposal. Again, this isn't something the Water Authority didn't come knocking on my door saying we want Hampton Bays. It was a town board in response to many questions, many concerns we were receiving that began this conversation. And ultimately, the town board, as your commissioners, will have to make a decision as to what we believe is in the best interest of the Hampton Bays community in terms of safe, good, clean drinking water. So with that, I'd like to begin our presentation. I'd like to turn things over to Jeff Sabo, the head of the Suffolk County Water Authority. Thank you, Jeff.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and to speak to you about the possible agreement between the town of Southampton and the Suffolk County Water Authority to manage the Hampton Bays Water District. It's heartening to see so many folks from the community care about drinking water and care about safe, potable water to come out on a cold evening in November to hear about the specifics. So I applaud you for that. Thank you very much. So we're going to go through, I'm going to run through a PowerPoint presentation. It's about 12 to 15 minutes long, and then we'll open up and answer any questions that you may have. I would encourage the residents here in attendance, if there's a question that isn't answered tonight, or isn't answered to your satisfaction and you need additional information, or we need to get you additional information, I would encourage you to reach out to my office directly or to my staff here to ensure that we can answer any question you may have to your satisfaction. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the Suffolk County Water Authority and how we operate and who we are. So we are an independent public benefit corporation operating under New York State law. We are not part of Suffolk County government. We're one of the largest groundwater suppliers in the country. We presently serve about 1.2 million residents in Suffolk County. We began operations in 1951, and we operate without taxing power on a not-for-profit basis. So 99% of all of the revenues generated are paid through the consumption of potable drinking water. So the Water Authority has some of the lowest drinking water rates in the country when factoring in the cost of living. So this study was recently conducted by Goldman Sachs, and it's something that we're very proud of. I think most residents, when people complain about this utility bill or that utility bill, the Water Authority is always a bill that most folks say, it's not a major concern because on average it's far, far less than some of the other utilities that you pay for. We're also among the top 1 percentile of water suppliers in the United States. When it comes to financial stability, we hold 2 AAA ratings from Fitch and Standard & Poor's. That was just recently upheld by the rating agencies this past fall when we went out to market. We also have, this is a fact that we're very proud of, we have an in-house staff of engineers and hydrogeologists that are constantly working to perform research and to deploy the most state-of-the-art treatment quickly. That's something that many other water providers really in the region do not have. This is a map of our service territory. You can see on the left side of the screen here, that's essentially western Suffolk. It extends to the Nassau County border. But we have regional offices spread across our entire service territory from roughly Melville out all the way to the North Fork and the South Fork, Montauk Point. We have a West Hampton office, Huntington, Bayshore office, Oakdale. We're scattered pretty evenly across the service territory. This next map shows the Hampton Bays Water District, where you can see the Water Authority providing service to residents on the east side of Hampton Bays Water District, and on the west side, we also have those 3 highlights, those is that red dots that indicate the interconnections between the Hampton Bays Water District and the Suffolk County Water Authority. Some operating statistics. We have 586 active wells. 586 active wells on about 235 well fields. Again, from Melville to Montauk. 64 storage tanks, totaling 68 million gallons of stored drinking water. We pump on average about 74 billion gallons. And typically, on an average daily pumpage is about 210 million gallons. One of the things we're most proud of, and something that Supervisor Schneiderman alluded to earlier, was our laboratory. Many years ago, I wish I could take credit for it under my tenure as CEO, but many years ago, the Water Authority made an investment to, instead of hiring an agency or a private lab to conduct drinking water samples and tests, they would build their own laboratory and hire staff to perform that analysis. So we have one of the largest groundwater testing labs in the United States with over 40 chemists and lab personnel. Our in-house standards for drinking water quality are often more stringent than state and federal regulations. That's a policy decision that the board at the Water Authority decided a long time ago, and we continue to uphold that to this day. The Water Authority also tests for almost 400 compounds. So in 2017, we tested for 387 chemical compounds, about 250 more than required by state and federal regulators. By comparison, the Hampton Bays Water District tested in 2016 for about 131 compounds. So that group of 250, that builds every year. Every year we are looking to test for unregulated contaminants to ensure that your drinking water is as safe as it possibly can be. The Water Authority analyzed 53,000 samples last year and produced 165,000 test results. Right? Just think of the magnitude of that. And another thing that the supervisor alluded to earlier, we have the ability when there's an issue, or we suspect that there's an issue or a possible compound that's been detected at one of our wells or well fields, we have the ability to do testing in-house and get those results back quickly so that if there is an issue and maybe a particular compound exceeds a certain minimum contaminant level, we're able to move very quickly and address it and ensure that it doesn't get out into the public drinking water system. The Water Authority also tests our drinking water at a higher frequency than required by the Suffolk County Health Department. County Health Department will require drinking water providers to test possibly quarterly for X contaminant or semi-annually for Y contaminant. We typically test at a higher frequency. Again, we're not required to do that, but it's something we have a very long history and a proud history of doing. Water Authority also tests samples at the wellhead, right? The actual well at various stages of treatment within the distribution system. So it's the well, it's the distribution system out. We have sample stations that you may see along the side of the road. And we also seek to determine both organic and inorganic chemicals. And again, as I just mentioned, because of that laboratory, we're able to get the results back very, very quickly. Typically, when it could take days or weeks in instances, we're able to get those results back in a matter of days. So a potential existing, we have existing operating agreements similar to what we're proposing with the town of Southampton for the Hampton Bays Water District. We presently manage the Riverside Water District. About 15 years ago, is that right, Joe? About 15 years ago, maybe a little more than that. We entered into agreement to manage that district, which is also in Southampton. We have a long-standing agreement to manage the Brentwood Water District, the East Farmingdale Water District, and the Deering Harbor Water District. So throughout the course of our history, municipalities like the town of Southampton have approached us and have said, listen, for whatever reason, we no longer want to be in the water business. We'd like you to come in and to manage and to provide safe, potable drinking water to our residents. We have entered into these agreements, and not one of them, not one of the water districts or municipalities have come back to us and said, you know what, this isn't working out. We want to take it back. We'd rather operate it on our own. All of those agreements are still in effect, and residents and the elected officials are very happy. Some of the benefits of an operating agreement with the Water Authority, as I mentioned, number one, I think first and foremost would be our laboratory and water treatment expertise. We can guarantee that your water quality would improve. We do think that one of the benefits to the residents of the area would be our 24/7 operations. Fast emergency response times. Our crews are already on the road. No one's jumping out of bed, running to the facility to load up a truck and get moving. We have staff out in the field, North Fork, South Fork, right in the immediate area that are able to respond. We're also planning on making significant improvements, capital improvements to the infrastructure, and we have already made commitments to continue to move forward when it comes to workforce technology, whether that's automated meter reading or mobile workforce technology. So the board at the authority continues to invest in the future. Another substantial benefit to the residents of Hampton Bays would be reliability, right? Sort of sustainability, reliability. We would make several improvements to the interconnections that exist between Hampton Bays District and the existing Water Authority District so that those connections are improved. And I think the So you have water quality being extremely important, improvements in testing and sampling to ensure your water is as safe as possible, and then you have rate stabilization. When you look at what customers pay on average at the Suffolk County Water Authority and what on average the residents of the Hampton Bays District are presently paying, it's comparable. They're right there. They're neck and neck. So we think that although the town of Southampton elected officials and town board would continue to set rates within the district, there would be rate stabilization, and I think that's a great benefit to the residents here. So we would provide customer service to these roughly 6,400 customers of the Hampton Bays Water District. The existing employees would be offered employment. All of the existing employees would be offered employment at the Water Authority. We will provide immediately $6.1 million worth of capital improvements to the water supply and distribution system. That's an immediate commitment. Those improvements may take a little bit of time because of writing contracts and letting contracts and awarding contracts and getting the projects finished from start to finish. But I think that will also, those are absolute deliverables that we commit to making within the first couple of years. So the improvements would be certainly focused on improving water quality, efficiency, and reliability. Southampton Town would still set water rates. No new water district debt would be incurred, and eventually the existing debt would be retired. So Supervisor Schneiderman had mentioned earlier, residents presently pay for consumption, right, your water bill, but you also pay a tax, a portion of your taxes for the water district. That district debt would not incur any additional debt, and it would go down over time. The town has the option to cancel the agreement at any time, right? SCWA would be responsible for the cost of all future improvements. So we've identified, we're making that $6 million initial investment, but we're also committing to, we've identified, I think it's upwards of $10 or $12 million in sort of total capital improvements that the district, that we'd like to see have made in the district. We would incur the cost, our entire customer base would incur the cost for those improvements in the outer years. So the Water Authority will offer employment to the existing water district's employees. As I mentioned, the employees are, we've done an analysis, we've met with the staff. They would all receive higher wages. Many of them, it would be significantly higher than they presently pay. They would work out of the regional office, the SCWA regional office in West Hampton. We're also open to having a short-term agreement, maybe a year or two or so, have the existing Hampton Bays facility continue to operate, possibly as a customer service center or something. We're open to having that office remain open on an interim basis. The employees would also have an opportunity for advancement. Union employees at the Water Authority, they would be assigned to the West Hampton office, and they wouldn't be forced to go anywhere else. If they wanted to leave that office, and that office essentially covers both on a production control and a customer service sort of perspective, the South Fork, basically, if they wanted to move and advance, they could bid through our union collective bargaining agreement, a bidding process, move to another location. But they wouldn't be forced to do that. They'd also continue to be part of the New York State retirement system, as they are now, and their health benefits would be provided through the Empire Plan. So in summary, the customers will benefit from improved water quality, stable water rates, the expertise of the Suffolk County Water Authority's laboratory, engineering, and overall staff, system redundancy, and the town has the option to opt out of the agreement at any time. So that is the PowerPoint. I'd like to turn it back over to Supervisor Schneiderman at this time and open it up to questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. I just want to say one thing on the capital work. So the $6.1 million, we have looked at those items. Most of them we feel are necessary capital items. So whether we go with Suffolk County Water Authority or we stay with the current arrangement, most of that will have to be done. It's resurfacing, recoating of the water tanks, it's filtering out some of the iron and manganese that are causing the discolored water. There's some booster pumps that will help alleviate pressure problems. So if we don't go and we have to pay for that, so typically the capital is in your property tax. You have a line in your property taxes for the water district. I said earlier it's about $130, $132. So I had the controller run some numbers as terms of what would that cost on a per household basis. It's something like an additional $80, something in that neighborhood. So it could lead to an $80 increase in your property taxes, or we could pick it up in the what we charge per gallon. But we'd have to, obviously the district has to pay for that. If we don't go in this direction, we still need to do the work. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Okay, so we're going to go to the audience, and I ask that everybody be respectful. Whether you agree or disagree, allow the speaker to speak his or her mind. Please don't interrupt. I know when Mr. Szabo was speaking, there was some curses coming from the back. We have kids here. Please try to be respectful. This is an important issue. I understand it's people's livelihoods, people's quality of life. It's impacting people in a big way. But please try to be respectful to every speaker. And what we're going to do is we're going to give each speaker 3 minutes to ask their questions and make their comments known. If they have a question, we'll try to figure out who is best qualified to answer it. We have quite a bit of expertise here. I also, through my deputy supervisor, we reached out to the Hampton Bays Water District to see if they wanted to make a presentation as to why the current arrangement is the best arrangement. Frank, did we hear back?
Yes, they weren't prepared to make that.
They were not prepared. Okay, so we don't want this to be one-sided. We want the public to obviously have an opportunity to make an informed decision, to understand the current management and also this alternative proposal for a new management structure. All right, so let's go to the cards, and I'll say the speaker's name. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name, and I'm also going to say who's on deck. And the speaker will come up to this microphone over there. We'll make sure it's working appropriately, and we're going to try to time this. So if you're over 3 minutes, we will let you know. And the person on deck, if you could just queue up behind. So Anthony DePalma is speaking first. And Anthony, you have your 2 children with you. 1 minute for each kid and 3 for you. Okay. On deck will be Frank Maresca.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anthony DePalma from Hampton Bays. These are my boys, Rai and Kai. For those of you who don't know, I'm the past president of the Hampton Bays Civic Association. Also, my wife Ann and I were president and board member of the Hampton Bays Historical Society. We also served on the Hampton Bays CAC together. Currently, I'm a member of the Hampton Bays PTA, and for the last 3 years, I've coached my boys' soccer team, which is my favorite thing that I've done lately. I made a list of the top 5 reasons. First of all, I have spoken to a lot of parents in Hampton Bays about the proposed SCWA management agreement, and they are overwhelmingly in support, overwhelmingly. Parents with young children in particular are overjoyed. They are justifiably concerned, and they want the safest drinking water for their children.
Sorry, I'm trying to set a timer here.
Okay. I made a list of the top 5 reasons parents favor the management agreement.
Somebody else do it. Hold on, Anthony.
Okay.
Somebody have a timer?
I promise not to go over 7. I promise not to go over 7 minutes. All right. 3 for me, 1 for all. Yeah. Okay. I made a list of the top 5 reasons parents favor the management agreement. And these are parents that I've met through my coaching and through a lot of my social calendar, which is dictated by my social managers to my left here. Okay? Okay. The first one, and a lot of these things they were actually covered in the presentation. But the number one thing is SCWA has their own world-class water testing laboratory with 40 chemists and lab personnel. Hampton Bays has none. Kai will read number 2.
Because the SCWA has their own cutting-edge lab, they can better guarantee the accuracy of the tests and get test results back fast, sometimes in only 24 hours. Currently in Hampton Bays, test results can take weeks or even months. SCWA's very accurate testing and fast results will keep us safer. SCWA tests for 387 dangerous compounds, which is 250 more than currently tested in Hampton Bays. Hampton Bays only tests the minimum required by law. SCWA tests for 250 more than required and tests at a higher frequency. Because SCWA tests for more contaminants and at a higher frequency, they will keep us safer.
Very good place. You guys stand up on either side. Okay. Number 4. SCWA has the lowest water rates in the country, as mentioned, when factoring in the cost of living. Over the last decade, the Hampton Bays Water District actually has been charging more. I know Mr. Szabo said it's about even, but the calculations that I've done shown it is, and sometimes significantly more in the properties that I have in Hampton Bays. The Hampton Bays has gotten away with this because some of what they pay is hidden in our property taxes. But even worse, while we are being charged more, our infrastructure has been neglected. So SCWA charges their customers less, while at the same time maintaining and upgrading their infrastructure better than us. Of course, as we know now, we have some costly catching up to do. And our water rates will increase much faster with SCWA's help, without SCWA's help. In fact, without SCWA's involvement, our water rates could skyrocket. Number 5, this is the final one. I get 3 minutes for me and 1.5 minutes for my children. SCWA has 586 wells. Hampton Bays has only 11. Moreover, our wells are grouped into well fields, as many places are. Some of the wells are only 100 feet apart. So when a contaminant is detected, several wells get shut down. This is what happened last year when 3 wells had to be shut down. What happens if another well field has to be shut down? Or 2 well fields? We only have 4 or 5 well fields. Could it happen? Yes, it could happen. I'm going to quote from our own 2017 Drinking Water Quality Report produced by our own Hampton Bays Water District. Here is what it says. Our water is derived by 11 drilled wells. The source water assessment has rated most of the wells as having a high susceptibility to industrial solvents and nitrates. I'll repeat that. Our wells have a high susceptibility to industrial solvents and nitrates. There's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And then what? Our taps run dry, more unsafe black water, and you'll have an angry mob of sleep-deprived mothers attacking Town Hall. SCWA eliminates this.
Anthony, I have to ask you to finish here.
Okay,
so one more sentence.
One more minute. SCWA eliminates this risk by providing us what we cannot provide for ourselves. A large, expertly managed network of wells. In closing.
I gave him time for the kids. In closing,
it's appropriate that this meeting for improving our water district is taking place here at the Hampton Bays High School, which itself is going through major improvement. Thanks to the leadership of Lawrence Clemenson, our schools are improving every day, and one day our schools will be better than those in the rest of Southampton. This town board can do the same.
Order!
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Excuse me. Can we have order? Okay? 3 people, could have been 3 minutes each, right? 9, we gave him 4 minutes. If you could be respectful, you can bring, you want to bring your kids up if they're brave enough, go for it. All right. All right, can we move on? Can we move on? All right, then can we please have some quiet so we can do that? All right, Frank Maresca, followed by Patrick Kotari. Katari, thank you.
Good evening. Pretty hot in here. Thank you for the opportunity. If this arrangement, this management agreement does not go through and we still need the estimated $6.1 million in infrastructure repair, and it would be a tax increase, would it be a tax increase to the amount to raise the $6.1 million and then it disappears? Or will that tax increase go in and remain? Part one.
Okay.
The other part of the question is, I'm curious why Suffolk County Water Authority is interested in taking over management of our water district.
Okay, so I'll take the first question. So typically when the town does a large capital project, like a $6 million project or a combined $6 million, we borrow the money, we bond for it, and then we pay it back over time. Could be a 15-year period. Len, when you ran the numbers, was it based on a 20-year? 20-year bond, so 15, 20 years. So it would be paid back slowly. Otherwise, it would have a much larger sudden impact on the ratepayers. So you stretch it out. We borrowed pretty low interest rates, 3%, something in that range. All right. The second question is, why would Suffolk County Water Authority be interested? And I'll let the Suffolk County Water Authority folks answer.
It's a very good question. Yep. People, I think, in fact, the supervisor asked a question at one of the presentations we made at Town Hall. So the Water Authority began operation in 1951, and throughout that time, we have either taken over or began taking over all these managed districts one by one by one. Typically, they would come to us, right? We were established by the legislature to provide safe, potable drinking water to the residents of Suffolk County. It's our mission. It's what we do. We have the expertise, we have the staff to provide it better than anyone else. Not only in Suffolk, but quite possibly the nation. So it's our mission.
And you're a non-profit organization?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Next up is Patrick Katari.
How are you? Yes.
And you'll be followed by Saul Ash. Saul Ash.
My first question is to the Water Authority. Did you take over Riverhead's Water Authority now? And did the town, you haven't taken it over yet?
No, the Riverhead Water District is independent of the Suffolk County Water Authority.
Okay. And my next thing is to the board. There's 5 people up there. You quoted all these percentages of 300 people. There was 6,100 you left out. Now it's tax, and we own it. We're not customers. We own the Water Authority. And I want to know why it doesn't come to a vote. Why should 5 people up there say what we're going to do? We own it. And my other question, and then I'll sit down. My other question is, where is the money, the $1.3 million that we got for the settlement with the fuel problem with the water? And where is all the money on the tower? Where does that go? And we should, as taxpayers, not taxpayers, owners, should see where that money goes. We should have a thing sent to us at least every 6 months of how the money's spent, where it's going, and who it's going to. So at the next meeting, I would like to know where all that money went.
Okay, all right. So there were 3 questions. So one concerning the settlement. There was a lawsuit over a compound MTBE.
Right.
The water district received around $1 million for that. A
1.3.
lot of it was spent on the water filtration that was
Okay.
recently put in. We did get some grant money for that too. There may be some balance left of that money. No, the controller's saying it's all spent at this point. So we'll try to get you full accounting of it. But those water filters cost $1 million to put in, I think slightly
Okay,
over.
that's fine.
There was a...
Look, my question is,
There was
why
3
do
questions.
5 people
Okay, so-
decide what we do? You're only the commissioners. We own it.
Right.
It should be a democratic thing. It should go to a vote to the taxpayers. And if we go yea or nay, whoever it is, I'd sit down and wouldn't say a word. But
Okay,
the town does not own our water authority. We own it.
Right, and this proposal would not sell any of the infrastructure or give up any rights to the aquifer at all.
My question.
So that's not even on the table.
You're not
But
answering
let me
my
just finish. So the survey was sent out to everybody. We've gotten 300 back so far. More will come in,
Yeah,
and we encourage everybody to participate. In terms of a public vote, and honestly, I'd love to see a public vote on this.
Then why don't you do
I
it?
would love it. Right now, there's no legal mechanism that I can figure out that will do that.
What legal
So-
mechanism? You're the
so-
5 people that decide
You can't
what's
just
gonna
put
happen.
everything out to public vote. We are elected to represent you. We can't have a conversation if people are yelling from the audience. So if we can figure out a way to put it to public vote, I'd love to see that. If not, we are your representatives. You did elect us. You might not have elected us personally, but we are elected by the town, and we are responsible for providing you clean, safe drinking water. So we're doing the best we can.
I've been here 40 years and I've never had any problem with the water. Really? We got 300 people, like you said. There's 6,100. I don't care if you get 1,000. They're in the minority, we're in the majority. And you should go to a vote to the people that own the water authority. It should not be up to you 5 people. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. If any other board members want to respond, just feel free to weigh in. All right, so next up so next up is Saul Ash, followed by Elizabeth Ramjic.
Thank you. Most of the questions I had coming into this meeting seem to have been addressed, but I'm still have a puzzled feeling as to some of the issues that were identified, such as increased contaminant testing, overall water quality improvement. What I mean specifically is many water districts that are independent on Long Island, outside of the SCWA, Nassau County as one example, have the capability to do what you're doing. Okay, whether they have the means and the money is a question, I would guess, of will, or is it cost? Okay, as far as identifying contaminants, threats to the aquifer, things of that nature, local water districts have the ability to use the DEC expertise, New York State DEC, and also Suffolk County Department of Health Services. So somewhat, as some of the previous people have had questions, I'm wondering why, since there is, on theory, the capability of Hampton-Bay's water district to do this, is this primarily a question of taxes and cost, or is there some other underlying reason why we're talking about a management takeover?
So, I mean, I'll try it first, and we'll pass it to the Water Authority. So, right now, we do engage the services of an engineering company. Right. They don't work, they're not town employees. We don't have a town engineer that works for the Water Authority.
I'm a professional geologist, I understand.
Okay, so we hire a company called H2M,
Right.
and they work with the water district. The testing labs we use, we are doing the basic testing required. We're not doing those additional 250 compounds. And we're doing at the frequency required, not at a higher frequency. Why they choose to do that, it's a company policy. It's a not-for-profit company. I believe they're dedicated to delivering the highest quality water. That's a decision that they have made. Could we do those things? Yes, I suppose we could. We could test for more chemicals. There's be a cost associated with doing that.
Yeah, for example, you can go to whatever commercial laboratory the water district is using can turn around these water samples within 1 or 2 days, just at an extra cost. So is cost...
I don't know that that's true.
Oh, I know that that's true. Okay, is cost the driver here?
I have not heard of a laboratory that can turn around a PFAS test in less than like 3 or 4 weeks.
Maybe some specifics, okay, that may be some, but in general, they generally, for most contaminants, we're talking about I'm not familiar with the one you just mentioned, but most contaminants they can turn around within 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, and we do that with a lot of, you know, the biological things, coliform and things like that. We get quick responses, acid-base tests and things like that. But some of these emerging contaminants, we have to send to specialized laboratories, and it's taking a long time. And that's a frustration because we test the water. This is just the way it is. We test the water. The water is in the system while we're waiting. The well is pumping, supplying water, and we are waiting to find out whether that water meets the safe drinking water standards. Sometimes it's weeks and weeks before we find out that the water we're providing actually meets, you know, that minimum requirement. That is not a good situation to be in.
Is SCWA turning around PFOA analysis any quicker than that?
Yes, 48 hours.
Well, I think there's a contradiction there. There should be other labs who can do the same thing.
Find me one. I don't know. But there's other things too. I mean, they do have 3 interconnects, as you know, so you have the ability to bring in additional water, you know, to dilute whatever issues you're having here with, you know, higher quality water. So that's a possibility. But Jeff, did you want to add to that?
I would just comment on where the industry is headed, where the sort of water industry is headed, whether it's the EPA or the state health department or the local health department, you have seen over the last several years far more attention paid to drinking water quality. Nationally, you know, there have been some national situations that have drawn tremendous media attention. Hoosick Falls, New York, and certainly over in Michigan, right? Flint, Michigan. That really captured, you know, the nation's imagination, thinking, what if it's happening here, could it happen in my neighborhood? The state, the governor, and the county executive in Suffolk for the last several years have been very, very proactive talking about water quality, whether it's drinking water quality or surface water quality. And in fact, Governor Cuomo set up a council, a drinking water quality council, to look at unregulated contaminants, which Hampton Bays is not testing for, but we are testing for several years now, to set standards. So the sort of long-winded point I'm trying to make here is there are going to be more stringent regulations handed down by either the EPA or the state health department in order to protect everyone in this room. That's a good thing. We're proud of that because we, in many, many instances, have already been testing for them and treating for them. So things are only going to get better from the customer's perspective in ensuring that you're drinking safe, potable drinking water, but it's going to be exceedingly more difficult for the small water districts to function, to provide that high level of water quality with additional testing and requirements by the state and federal government. We're doing that already. We're doing that already. Our customers are drinking, you know, quite possibly some of the best drinking water in the nation. So, I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so Elizabeth Ramson is next, followed by Matthew, okay, declines? Okay, so then Matthew Hatroff is next, followed by Shelley Burkowski.
Thank you. My name is Matt Hadoff. I'm the president of Suffolk Local 852. I represent the employees of the towns and villages in Suffolk County. If this deal goes through, where do these guys end up on the seniority list? Are they going to be forced to work nights and weekends? These are a few of the questions I have. I'd also like to know, has the water district, is that losing money every year? Are they in the black every year? Are they in the red? Where are they from one year to the next? Are they making money on a good year and not on a bad year? These are some of the questions that should be asked. I don't think Suffolk Water is really the answer. From what I've heard, they've used to contract through Riverhead to get water to pump it west. I believe they can't get enough water to supply the customers they have, and that's why they're looking for these wells. I also, a comment was made, I believe it was by you, Mr. Schneiderman, that you pump water from Suffolk Water into Hampton Bays to dilute it. The solution to pollution is not dilution. If you need to put money into it, you put money into it. But you also need to sit down and negotiate with the people that you're ultimately going to put out of work. What you're doing is not right.
So you basically brought up three things, and you're with SCWA, right? That's what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so first, in terms of the dilution issue, let's start there, because that's a common practice. That's something that the Hampton Bays Water District currently does. So you have a well field, you have, let's say, the well field, first well field, there are 3 wells typically pumping. There's a combined, they get blended together. So one well may be a little higher, another a little bit lower, and there's a blended rate, and that's just something that's common. So I understand your point, but you know, it's a concentration issue. So if you have some contaminated, it's in a much larger pool, the concentration goes down. I agree, I'd rather get the contaminant out completely, and that's why we put that filtration system in place. The other, I know you have one question that has to do with the seniority. I feel like there was a third piece, though. I'm forgetting now.
The third piece was finance.
Oh, financing, yeah. So the budget is completely balanced. So there's an operating cost to delivering water, paying the employees, benefits, maintaining the infrastructure. That is paid for in the 2 sources we said earlier. So there's part in your tax bill, pays for some of it, and then the water consumption, your regular water bill. You add those 2 together, and it basically covers all the costs. One year, if it's a little lower, you know, then you make it up with reserves that hopefully you've set aside. But we, you know, there are some reserves, rainy day funds for emergencies that were unanticipated. But it's a balanced budget, right, Len? The budget is balanced in the Hampton Bays Water District. Okay. And Jeff?
My name is Tim Hopkins. I'm General Counsel for the Suffolk County Water Authority, and I'd like to address the question regarding seniority. We have a collective bargaining agreement with the union that represents the workers of the Suffolk County Water Authority, and I believe there's a provision in that CBA that will essentially allow workers of the Hampton Bays Water District to maintain their seniority, but we're working with our union to make sure that that can be put in place. I would also mention that each of the workers who who decide if the deal goes through to accept employment with the Suffolk County Water Authority, they would all be assigned to our West Hampton office, which isn't far from here. They would have an 8 to 4:30 shift, Monday through Friday. They wouldn't ever have to move from that office if they chose not to. We have a system which employees in the union can bid on higher positions for higher pay. There be higher pay positions in that particular office, or they could bid to any position they wanted to in the Water Authority, and those positions are then awarded on the basis of your seniority and your experience. So there's greater opportunity, as we have about 380 union positions in the Water Authority, and right now there's a lot of movement in different positions, allowing people to move up in pay. Depending on the position, we believe that the workers would be able to realize anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 higher salary. We have very generous vacation and holiday entitlements that I'm sure are comparable to the towns. And all in all, I think financially speaking, they would do much better if they were to accept employment with the Suffolk County Water Authority.
And how far west of West Hampton does that yard operate?
So, as we indicated in our presentation, I'm not sure you're here for that, but we operate all the way from Melville all the way out to Montauk. If you were assigned to the West Hampton office, you would go to the West Hampton office, and as part of your workday, you would probably work in the area surrounding the West Hampton office, in the West Hampton office area, which would include Hampton Bays, if there were such an agreement. but you may be assigned, you may have a job that you have to go farther away, but that's all while you're on the clock. You're in a water authority vehicle, so that would, they wouldn't have to move from just that office being assigned to.
Just to be clear, though, an employee assigned to the West Hampton office, working their 8:30 to 4:30 shift, would not be making a customer service call to a resident in Babylon. They generally stay in the sort of on the South Fork. But as Tim mentioned, I'm not sure if you were here, but we have an East Hampton office, we have a Coram office, we have a Hop Hog office, we have an Oakdale office, so we're pretty spread out. But it would be in a somewhat limited region.
And the only other thing I got to say is you still have to negotiate it with us.
So Jeff, to your overtime policy is slightly different than the town's too. So the town does provide overtime. We do it as comp time. It's non-pensionable. You guys have actually pensionable, real dollar, right, overtime?
So as part of our collective bargaining agreement, what we do is we try to equalize overtime among the employees to the maximum extent practicable. It's assigned on the basis of the office where you're working out of and the kind of function you perform. If you're a construction management employee in that department and there's a call for need of that type of work, we have a list. It's actually, it goes through a computer system where the employee is notified on their cell phone if there's an opportunity to work overtime. You're not mandated to work any overtime if you don't want to. It's completely voluntary. But usually it's pretty competitive because people like to get the extra money.
All right, thank you, Tim. All right, so Shelley Brukowski, and Shelley is followed by Joseph Moore.
I don't specifically have a question, but I'd like to address my Hampton Bays residents. And as a teacher, we have rules. If someone's disrespectful, I like to stop the time, because that's not fair to me or any of the other speakers. And the young boys that were here should not have heard those sounds. Okay, as a teacher, I would take it away. I'll take it here. Okay, I run visuals, because that's what we go home and remember. I got involved when I thought about my grandchild. Can't he drink this water? His mother called me in fear. I was away on vacation seeing her daughter, or my sister, my daughter, in Virginia. Should I give this to my baby? I didn't know. I didn't get any information. So I got involved, and thankfully Jay listened to us. We had a small meeting. Mr. Tommy John listened also. We're happy they're here. We're happy that sounds like a solution that could be good for all of us. Change isn't easy. No one likes to change. And I thought of the analogy today of a doctor. I have a doctor. I like my doctor. He gives me advice, but sometimes maybe I don't know if it's the best advice, but I like him. So I go to a different doctor. I get a second opinion. And this is the best of two opinions. You get the opinion of a new person with newer apparatus, larger equipment, and we get the comfort of our old doctor by the employees who get to stay together. They keep their jobs. They stay here local. It, to me, sounds like a win-win situation. I come from the Midwest. We have cities where you lose your job, you lose your city. My whole high school was demolished. You're lucky to have these jobs right here in your neighborhood. Look around the country. Things are changing. We need to help our children. We need to help ourselves. I have friends in Hoosick that go back there for testing for cancer. They're dying of cancer from PFOA and PFOS. Think wisely. This sounds like a great deal for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. All right, Joseph Moore, followed by Ken Donnell.
Good evening. My name's Joseph Moore. I live in Hampton Bays since the 70s. I have a question, since it seems that Santa Claus has come early this year to the Suffolk County Water Authority, that you're bearing this great gift of money, $6 million for this and all kinds of other things, which are great. My question is, why are we going to be so lucky and get all this?
As I mentioned earlier, this is what we do. You know, we're the experts. This is how we operate. This is why we were created. We were created to provide safe drinking water to all of the residents of Suffolk County. That service territory stretches from Melville to Montauk. The $6 million is based on the financial revenues generated by the district. That number wasn't sort of pulled out of the air, a magic number. So we looked at the finances, we had discussions with the town controller, and that's sort of the estimated amount of money that's available for this. And I don't know if our CFO, Beth Vassallo, wants to comment a little more, but that's essentially, there's no gift. You know, that's the revenue generated by the district.
It just sounds like you're going to spend an awful lot of money for Hampton Bays people. You know,
we have almost, you know,
you're not going to get anything in return?
Well, there would be a payment made, right? There would be a payment made to the Water Authority for the services rendered. The town would set those rates. The town commissioners would set the rates for the residents, which would be comparable to what you're paying now. But this isn't out of the ordinary for the Water Authority to identify a particular problem at a well field and say that well field needs granular activated carbon, or it needs some sort of treatment, and we'll make the investment in that particular well. In some communities, we have very, very little treatment. In other communities, we have millions of dollars worth of infrastructure built to treat that particular area. Your area, Hampton Bays, needs at least $2.5 million in an iron and magnesium filtration system yesterday, right? You have another several $1 million in work that needs to be done to restore your 2 elevated storage tanks. That needs to get done today. We can make, we're prepared to make those investments and ensure that capital work gets done. It's not Christmas. This is just the truth. This is the way it is.
In your brochure, you make a statement about rates. Probably, I don't know if you used that word. Stable was the word you used, which I had to look up because I thought I knew what stable meant. And I also thought I knew what the word is meant until I was told by the president one time that you didn't know what is. It's not always what it seems. So thank you for your time.
Just real quickly, Joe, because I want to respond as well. So, and I said this before, the Hampton Bays, the Suffolk County Water Authority didn't come knocking on my door saying, we want to take over the Hampton Bays Water District. The town board, after listening to a lot of people can you turn that off? After listening to a lot of people, I'll wait for that to end. After listening to a lot of people calling my office saying, can we drink the water? And they would say to me, hey, Jay, can I drink the water? And they would say it's brown or it's black. And what am I supposed to say? And, I would say, look, I wouldn't drink it if it was discolored. I'm being told that the water is safe to drink, but, people are nervous. People keep telling me they're paying their water bill, but they're buying bottled water. So they're paying that on top of their water bill. I want people to know that they can walk up to their faucet and they can open it up and they can fill up a glass of water and they can drink it without fear. Or they can get in the shower or in the bathtub and have no fear. Whether we go with these guys or not, we have to address this problem locally. Right? People have to know their water is safe to drink. So we have a PR problem, and I think we have a real problem. We have to make sure that the water isn't discolored. We have to make sure our infrastructure is maintained, that our system's modernized, automated. We've got to do all those things. So one way or another, we're going to do them. Now, the money that they're providing, that $6.1 million, is not a gift. I want to be clear about that. So if we go with them and they provide that $6 million, and a year from now we say, you know what, we want to go back to the way things were. Bye-bye, you guys. They've laid out that money. We now have to borrow the money and pay them back what they laid out. So that's just, we're not asking them to give us a gift of $6 million. We'll reduce the, for the 1 year that they were here, and the balance we have to give them back. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. All right, so we're going to go to the next speaker, Ken Donnell. Ken is here. Ken is followed by Laura Smith.
Hi, good evening. So my name is Ken Donnell. I'm living over in the Shinnecock Hills area. I have a couple of specific questions for you. One of them has to do with the cell phone towers. The Hampton Bays Water District currently has cell phone towers that they rent, right? They receive revenue. And does the district receive that, or is the town receiving that?
The district gets it. That money goes to help defray the costs of operating the district.
Okay. So with this deal, does that revenue stay with the Hampton Bays District to help offset water bills?
I don't remember the exact details of it, but yes. Just let me answer. We have the answer. Do you have
So the
agreement?
answer to that is yes, it does. All the existing revenue from all the existing cell phones, towers that are there now, stay with the district. If in the future we have additional cell phone towers, the agreement calls for splitting that 50-50.
Okay. Let's see, you answered the question about the 6.1. I was wondering if we were responsible for that if the agreement didn't go. Currently, Hampton Bays really is not at risk of any problems that may be caused by the rest of Suffolk County water demands or town's actions that could disrupt or affect the water supply. So with going with the Water Authority, we now, I think, open ourselves up to possibly disruptions or water quality issues created by other towns. I mean, is that a possibility where, let's say, I know there's a huge development, I think, is going in off of Sagato's Parkway. I think there's like 10,000 apartments. I think they cut it down to 3 or something. But if you're going to be supplying the water there, can that affect Hampton Bays supply at all? Or what guarantees do you have that other towns overbuilding or anything like, whatever they could do that could be detrimental to the water quality or supply is not going to affect Hampton Bays? Because right now we're not open to that risk.
Sure. So that's a great question. So the way the water distribution system is built throughout Long Island, if you get into Nassau County or out here in East End, it's a gridded system of small diameter pipe. We don't transmit water long distances. We can't move water from Montauk to Amityville and vice versa. The water that's produced in the area generally stays in the area. So being susceptible to contamination that's going on in the Sagato's Parkway or Jerry Wolkoff City that he's going to build over there, that's not going to have anything to do with the Hampton Bays area. And you'd still benefit, you know, I don't want to back off of the issue of the laboratory continually testing the water, and then you having an agency in the Water Authority that is ready to react to protect you as soon as those things are detected. So the Water Authority moves very, very quickly when it comes to time to these things. You have one carbon filter at that plant number 1. We have 150 of those carbon systems that we've built out throughout our system. So we're very, very familiar with deploying that type of technology, and we can do it very, very quickly. So that's your assurance.
Okay. All righty. The last question. The neighborhood east of Shinnecock Canal has very low water pressure during the warmer months due to lawns and gardens being watered right now. It's not uncommon to have zero pressure during some weekday mornings. A solution was proposed to tie the Hampton Bays Water District east side water main into the Suffolk County Water Authority water line on North Road, when the water main modifications were going to be made for the CPI Canal East development. Just wondering if the SCWA takes over, will this area find their water pressure normalized in this area sooner rather than later, or waiting for that development to occur?
So I was somewhat involved with the discussions about the interconnection. That interconnection that was going to be installed, actually they're going to use the existing interconnection and just automate it. And the reason was for the Canoe Place development, they didn't have enough fire flow to cover that development in the event that there was a big fire and a lot of water was necessary. Because of the nature of the Hampton Bays water distribution system, you can't get enough water there to fight a fire. So what we were going to do was, right now, if we want to bring water from Southampton, from the Water Authority, into Hampton Bays, we have to actually go out and manually open a valve. And that relies on a person to go out and open the valve. We were going to automate that valve so that if the pressure went low during a fire, the valve would automatically open. So under normal circumstances, it would have no effect on your water pressure. Under a fire condition, anytime there's a fire and the fire department is drafting water out of fire hydrants, you're going to see lower pressure in the area, but that's only under the fire condition.
Right. So I'm just wondering, timing-wise, because the modification is supposed to be made with the CPI development happening. If you guys take over, can that happen sooner? And I don't know when the takeover could actually would even happen, which would come first. But
well, it's something
just
we would
wondering.
look at.
We're just trying to get that pressure normalized.
Yeah,
as soon as
well,
we can,
it's something
right?
we would look at. We may not even need to make that an automatic valve. We may just leave the valve open, depending on how we would reconfigure the system, obviously, if we had a management agreement. And it may turn out that we'd bring Southampton over and it would all become one system. There wouldn't be a valve between the two areas at all. So that would all be one system.
Right.
And if you ever had an issue with low pressure, and believe me, the Water Authority, we serve all different elevations. If we have an area where people have a low pressure problem, and sometimes maybe it's just during the summertime, we will react and we will adjust the pressures, or we will install infrastructure to provide higher pressure in the form of maybe a small package booster system that actually elevates the pressure to provide you good pressure during the peak periods.
Okay. All right, thanks. And just thanks to all of you for putting this together. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I just want to mention, too, before we get to the next
I'm sorry,
speaker, I just want to mention quickly, this isn't directly responding to any particular question, but we've discussed a lot of different items tonight, right? We've talked about water quality, we've talked about some specific capital improvements, we've talked about the employees, and where would they fit in and all that. This isn't a bait and switch. This isn't something where we're coming up here where we're making, providing, Christmas early. This is going to be all specifically spelled out, every individual, longevity, salary, office location, benefits, particular immediate capital improvements, when they'll take effect, what exactly we will do. This will all be laid out in a document for the residents of the community to consume and review before a decision is made. So I just want to be, that may go without saying, but I just want to be very clear on that.
Okay, is Laura Smith here? There's Laura, and while Laura comes up, Laura is followed by Alan Nicholson.
Good evening, everyone. Laura Smith. Full disclosure, I am the president of the Town of Southampton SCWA unit, but I think it's inappropriate to be having these discussions in this forum. I would not have brought this up in this particular arena, so I'm not going to be speaking to you tonight about that. I'm actually a resident of Hampton Bays, so I want to ask questions and address you with my concerns. The first is, if there's such urgency to do these improvements and all this, why wasn't the town board applying for the grants that are available now for drinking water from the state of New York? We read about Riverhead getting these grants, we read about Glen Cove getting grants recently to do all these improvements. So if there was such urgency, why was the town board focused on trying to get Suffolk County Water Authority to come up with a plan? And they're talking about doing these improvements a couple of years from now. I think we need to address that now, and the best way to do that is for the town board to be looking at those grants. Why should we be focused on the cost to the taxpayers when there's money available from the state to do this at no cost?
So let me try to answer that a little bit. So first, in terms of the urgency of these capital projects, so I didn't know that we needed some of these things until we actually started these conversations. So nobody said from the Water Authority, or the Water District rather, that we should be putting in an iron and manganese filtration in Wellfield number 4. I didn't find that out until these guys came and did some water tests and said, you got an iron and manganese problem in Wellfield number 4, and that is what's causing your discolored water.
But I thought you had a study done, an independent study that told you need.
No, what we had done was a regulatory compliance study. So now,
and they didn't tell you needed
the issues of the tank resurfacing, they brought it to my attention, not the Water District, right? There were a number of other things that they brought to my attention. So suddenly, yeah, now we've reviewed it. I think everybody understands that these things are necessary. There might be a couple things that are choices, like automating the meters, electronic meters, and automated billing and things like that. Those we don't necessarily have to do, but those other things are infrastructure quality issues that we have to do. Now, in terms of grants, and I brought this up with the Water Authority, some of these things we might be able to get grant money for. We may be able to. And if they're coming in with $6 million, and suddenly the state...
Through grants.
And suddenly the state gives...
Probably through grants.
Hold on, let me finish that. So let's say the state goes, here's the $6 million we're going to give you, the state's going to give you to cover these things. These guys are still going to bring in an additional $6 million in separate money beyond those grants. Is that correct? That is the commitment. So even if grants are supplied.
So you're going to saddle us with an additional $6 million that we may not need.
They're going to, look,
because
we
it's
know
on the
over
table.
time that work needs to get done. Right? So it's more than $6 million that needs to get done. We've got a water main we need to extend from Tiana down to Ponquag. There's a whole bunch of things that need to happen there that are going to be expensive. So, you know, one estimate is about $14 million worth of infrastructure that's needed over the next, I think, 5 or 10 years. So,
Well, can we see that data that proves that those estimates are correct? Because
there is
for it.
a list I could provide you. These guys provided me with an overall.
Well, that's their estimate, but where's the independent estimate? The town shouldn't just say, okay, Suffolk County Water Authority, tell us how much this is going to cost. You should get your own estimate. You should have your own cost analysis.
So whatever, Laura, yes, but
yeah,
they have some experience having done these capital projects elsewhere.
Yeah, but they also have an interest in taking over another independent water district.
These are estimates, so you never know until you go out to bid what exactly it's going to cost.
Yeah, but you have to have a better idea of what the real cost is. My next question is about the surveys. There was no way for you to know if people were filling out those surveys multiple times, if people were actually legitimately living in Hampton Bays, water district customers. I think you needed to do a better job of somehow getting some more hard data attached to who was filling out those and where the answers were coming from. And that's what I would recommend in the future. And also, I support the idea of a vote by the people who are affected by this. And I think you're going to find out that most of the people, no offense to the Suffolk County Water Authority, want to maintain local control.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
The only thing I'll say on the survey, you know, and our IT department works on that. You know, each computer has an individual IP address. So the same device could not answer that survey more than once. No, I understand that. People can cheat the system. If they have more than one computer, they can respond more than once. We ask them not to, but it's, you know, it's an honor system.
The other thing is, many of our employees are also volunteers. They're in the Hampton Bays Fire Department. They're in the ambulance corps. And because they work locally, they live locally, they're able to also respond as volunteers to serve the community in that respect as, you know, the first responders in the area. If they're working for Suffolk County Water Authority, are they going to be able to do that? I mean, I don't know what your policy is on that. But if they're far away from Hampton Bays and the call goes out and they're in the Hampton Bays Fire Department, I don't know that they'll be here.
Okay, let's let the water.
So I could answer the question about volunteers. We do have a policy that allows people to go and answer a call if they're a volunteer, and they still get their pay, even though they're.
But what if they're in Aquabog and the call's in Hampton Bays? I mean, it's just the response time to the event. That's my concern.
Well, like we said before, most of them would be in the West Hampton area because that's where our office is. Some of them would be actually working in the Hampton Bays area if there was work that required.
But they're in Hampton Bays now. That's the difference. They're in Hampton Bays now. When the call goes out in Hampton Bays, they're right there. And that's a big benefit.
Can I just say something? You know, back to the cost of all of the improvements to 6.1. The Water Authority has an annual budget of $74 million in that area for capital improvements throughout its system. So we are spending that kind of money on the water system every year, not just every 10 years or you know, whenever we can. Every year we spend that kind of money. So the projects that we do in mass. So we don't build one GAC system a year, we build 5. We don't put in a mile of water main a year, we put in 15. We'll spend $12 million next year just replacing aging water main. And I can guarantee you that at some point, if we do enter into an agreement, we're going to look at the water main in the Hampton Bays area and we're going to start replacing it. And that may be jobs that you folks won't get to for a long, long time. So when we have this type of elevated work that we do and the frequency that it's done, it gets done cheaper, it gets done faster, and we address the problems before they become big ones.
But we're also on the hook for all the debt that you have in other districts as well, outside of Hampton Bays, so that's another
The debt
concern
is
for
shared
us.
by all of the Water Authority's
But
customers,
it's something
and
we
that's a
don't-
benefit. Remember, the Water Authority is a public benefit corporation, and the benefit is to the customers. It's not to shareholders or some rich people. It goes to the customers. That's where the benefit goes. And that's a real important factor here.
I have one other question. It's about the tax levy. Are you saying that you're going to eliminate the tax levy when the debt is paid off, or are you going to maintain that tax levy for the customers in Hampton Bays? So in other words, do I have to pay Suffolk County water rates plus my tax levy for the water district?
So the total amount that the residents of Hampton Bays are paying for water, which right now comes from the 2 sources. Most of it's in their water bill. Some of it's in their property tax bill. That combined amount is going to stay the same. So at some point, the debt is going to be paid off. The sum total is going to stay the same in terms of what people pay. There's no effort at the moment to say we want to shift that amount all to property taxes or all to water bill. Obviously, the water bill is the fairest because it's based on consumption. So if you're not using a house, you're still paying the property taxes. But if you're using the water, obviously, you pay for what you use. So that would be a future decision to say whether we want to eliminate the property tax completely and put it in the water bill. But either way, the amount that they pay will stay the same. It won't go up. It'll be flat.
Okay. We'll see. Thank you for your time.
All right, how about Eugene Carlson? Pass. All right, how about Alex Bills? All right, and Alex will be followed by Ray D'Angelo.
My first point is that you have to understand this is a private corporation. Maybe nonprofit, but that doesn't mean that executive salaries are nothing. You have to understand there's like a Verizon coming in. That's number one. This is not a public corporation. That was my first point. Number two, they kept talking about testing, that they're doing 3 to 1 proportion, I believe. They had the graphic, you remember? Versus, their testing versus Hampton Bays. There's a cost to that. Who's ever doing that testing is a certified person, by the state probably. And they're getting paid a good buck each hour to do those testing. It's not free. We're going to bear that cost. The most important problem I have is, where is Hampton Bays Water District people? Where's Mr. King? Why isn't he here to defend himself? Essentially, Mr. Schneiderman is casting aspersion on the Hampton Bays Water District and saying, in a sense, that they're incompetent. In a sense, you're saying they're incompetent, that these are the competent people.
Not saying that they're incompetent. Robbie King is here. Robbie, will raise your hand. Has an opportunity to speak if he so wishes. I said we did a regulatory review, compliance review. They met all of the standards. There was no red flags. This is in an effort to address a lot of citizen concerns about the safety of their drinking water, discolored water, low pressure issues. We are conducting a review and analyzing a proposal to have Suffolk County Water Authority manage the district.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that they're not doing a good job. There's great men and women who work for the water district.
Okay. That was my point. I would like to have seen Hampton Bays Water District up here defending themselves. They're not here. All I'm hearing is one side of the story. I'd like to hear the rest of the board. I've called Mrs. Loftus. I've gotten no answer from her. What is their position? What is the rest of the board? All I hear is Mr. Schneiderman pushing this issue. You are the elected board. We are the masters. You are the servants. It's not the other way around. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. That's all I have to say.
I'm here to listen to the community, also to see what comes back in the surveys, also continue to review the proposal. I've not made any decision yet. I'm here to listen, just like everybody else is.
Okay, well then I say, Ms. Loftus, the survey, forget that. I typed in that URL. I got nothing. So I'm fairly conversant with computers. I wasn't able to get into that survey. I got nothing at home, hard copy-wise. So I was not a participant of this survey. So it seems like you're taking that survey and using that as a lever to bring in this entity. And I think that's completely wrong.
I believe that the survey is just one piece of information.
And I'm saying it's wrong. You should just discard that. Forget that. This is a valid entity right here. I wish everyone would stand up and have their have their say about this issue. That's all I have to say.
So I would just like to correct one thing for the record. The Suffolk County Water Authority is what's something called a public benefit corporation. Under New York state law, there's a definition of what a public corporation is, and there's 3 different types. There's a municipal corporation like the town. There's a district corporation. That would be like a school district or a water district. And there's something called a public benefit corporation, and that's what the Suffolk County Water Authority is. Under New York state law, we're all public corporations. And our powers are defined by New York state statute and the Public Authorities Law of the state of New York. And that statute says we are a governmental entity and we perform an essential governmental function. We are not a private corporation.
Is your board elected, sir? No.
Our board is appointed. It's appointed by the members of the Suffolk County Legislature. So we have 5 board members. We have a chairman and 4 board members. They're appointed each to a 5-year term by the Suffolk County Legislature.
I want to thank you for your comments and coming up here and letting us know how you feel. I want you also to know that this is not being pushed by one person on this board. All right, we're all up here and we are all listening, and we are all considering the benefits and weighing the pros and cons of changing management possibly in the Hampton Bays Water District. You know, it is about the health and safety of the water and the people in Hampton Bays. It is also about your tax rates and the employees of this water district. So, you know, because we're not saying something and answering every question, it doesn't mean, you know, that it's just being pushed by one person. That is just not accurate. So, I have to say thank you. Check.
You know, if I could speak, I think my colleagues would agree. We're here for one reason, is to provide the best quality of water to the residents of Hampton Bays. There's a lot of seniors here, a lot of children. That's our only motive. That's it. You know, you can try to think there's some nefarious plot. There's no nefarious plot. We just want to give you the best water we possibly can, period.
You're compelling me to respond as well, and I'm in the position of listening as well. We've had a series of events happening across Southampton town that are concerned. You hear me now? So we've had a lot of events over the Southampton town, some things that have caused us great concern and caused it's a health and safety issue for us, you know, from emergent chemicals, from the PFAS issues, from cloudy water, from dirty water. These are things that affect all of us in some way or another. So from our standpoint, we're going to look at every possible way that we can implement to fix this problem in the proper way. The Suffolk County Water Authority is an authority on this subject, and I think we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't listen to them. This is an informational meeting. It's here for your benefit as well as ours, to listen and to learn and to understand what it is we can do, can't do and should do, and that's part of this process. So this isn't being done in a vacuum. We've had lots of discussions over many, many weeks and months. Some issues that have emerged are of great concern, and I know they're great concern to people because we hear all the time about that, whether it's in East Hampton or Montauk or East Quogue or Hampton Bays. This is an event that seems to be occurring more and more often across Long Island, across New York State, across the country. Regulations put a lot more burden on the technologies to mitigate these issues, and the requirement to do that requires people who are extremely adept at this to manage these kinds of technologies. We've invested quite a bit of money to just put in carbon filters just for PFAS. Well, I don't know what emergent chemicals are going to come forward in the next coming years, and that's a concern to me. We've seen in other areas where these chemicals have emerged. It alarms me, and I want to talk to people who, from all intents and purposes, are probably one of the leading authorities in the nation, in our country, with the setup that they have. And all the questions that people ask are valid questions to ask. They're the same questions we ask. You know, we want to take care of our employees. We want to make sure that any kind of transition, if it occurs, is done in a way that is good for all of us. As far as surveys goes, yeah, surveys are an indicator to us. We certainly don't rely on that, but it helps guide us towards getting a sense of what the community wants. That's why we're here. To also hear what the community wants in a civil and organized way. So I appreciate your questions, and I look forward to hearing a lot more. That's just part of the process, so thank you.
All right, so back. If you want to speak, just fill out a card. We'll give you an opportunity. So the next speaker is Ray D'Angelo, and Ray's followed by Lauren Court.
I'm very gratified that everybody's concerned about the water quality in Hampton Bays, but I want to go step back for a second and discuss this $2.5 million filter for iron and manganese contamination, which is supposedly the cause for a lot of the cloudiness in the water, and they're not sophisticated chemicals. These are two base metals. And I'd just like to backtrack here for a second. Sandland, which is a sand mine in Noyak, which the town is currently trying to close because they have a composting operation to make mulch, and the surrounding wells were tested, and there was an increase in iron and manganese. And you, I think, are in court to try to stop this operation. At the same time, this is from the Southampton Press, the town wants to expand a similar operation in Hampton Bays. They want to increase over here in the former dump, which is now the transfer station, which has a huge mulching operation. You want to increase it. And this is a schizophrenic situation here. On one hand, in Noyak, you want to shut this operation down, and over here you want to increase it in Hampton Bays. The people in Hampton Bays deserve good water like anybody else in the town. And I think prevention would go along a lot further than installing a $2.5 million filter. I don't understand that. Maybe you can explain that to me, this dichotomy of, in one area you want to close the operation, and the other area you want to increase it here in Hampton Bays. And I know that you want to put it on a slab and all that, but I have to tell you that moisture is essential in a composting operation. So there's really no way that you're never going to have rainwater go through the compost and then seep into the ground, which most observers say is the cause of the iron and manganese infiltration into our water system.
So I think there's two pieces. I'll let the Water Authority talk about the filtration system for iron and manganese, but in terms of the Jackson Avenue brush facility, and Councilman Bouye might want to add to this, but basically we're not trying to expand it at all. We're trying to get it permitted, certified at its current levels, and trying to add some, yeah, you're right, a slab in there to help control runoff, and maybe put some, something over it to keep the rain off of it, so that we reduce any possible contaminations from manganese or other materials. So we're not trying to expand it, just simply have it permitted by the DEC at its current levels.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a difference, and with the DEC, there's a difference between what's called a permitted facility and a registered facility. So when you approach 10,000 cubic yards of compost generally, or organic material, if you begin to exceed that, then the DEC steps up their types of testing because they're concerned about the very things that you're concerned about. Those are the leachates that come out of those materials. Quite often you don't know where those materials originate, so you need to be extra careful with how you manage that. So what they require is more testing. There's no expansion we're almost up to that limit right now. Now, I rely heavily
The article here says you exceeded it regularly.
Well, yeah, if you go to 10,000 cubic yards or more, you need to be a registered facility, and we've approached that limit. But it's not an expansion. We have to learn how to manage that, particularly in terms of runoff. So the DEC requires testing wells to be placed in. The complication, particularly with the Hampton Bays transfer station, is that it had been a dump in its former life. So there's no expansion of that, but there's management of the water, of the runoff. That's the whole purpose of that.
You know what? That begs the question, though, if there is contamination, and the surrounding wells, which I understand that the DEC has, and I requested information about the results of the testing of those wells. If there is contamination, why don't you consider shutting the whole operation down?
Well,
you want to shut it down in Noyak, but you don't want to shut it down here.
Ray, I'm happy to go offline and talk to you. There's a lot more to it. We have our municipal engineer sits on many of the county committees. Many of the landscaping companies and the companies that use those and put that material, both from household and commercial, however that gets mixed, she's part of that, and we meet a lot on that subject.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so, but I live here. My children come out to visit. My grandchildren live here. They drink the water. We have cloudy water at times, and again, it begs the question, why in Noyak you're so willing to shut it down, and over here you want to expand it?
Well,
Aren't the people in Hampton Bay should be treated like anybody else in the town?
I'm not conflating those two issues. I understand what you're saying.
Well, I believe you are, sir. You said that you want to.
I'm happy to talk with you offline. We've used up a lot of time, but if you want to wait till after we're done, Ray, I'm happy to talk to you more about that, and can also get you the full DEC report, which I've seen.
Recently, we have this problem. We're not an incorporated village, and recently, $4 million of grants were given out by the Community Preservation Fund. We didn't get any of them because we don't have a village to apply for them. Flanders got some of them because they do have an active civic association. Ours is not, has another mission. I don't know what their mission is, but they didn't. And my question is, we don't even have, is there an office in the town that can apply for grants to improve the water situation here in Hampton Bays? We need a better septic system up on Main Street. We don't have a village here. We don't. We don't have people. We don't have a government structure to apply for these grants.
The short answer is yes. And many...
Well, why didn't we get any money then?
Well, if you allow me to answer the question. The short answer is yes. Just because you're not incorporated does not mean that the issues are brought to the town. We have within our departments, all those things are brought to the town, and then that application process is done by town staff and town staff to do that, to bring that to the CBF Water Quality Board. So it's not an issue of being incorporated or not incorporated.
Oh, I think it is, because we got zero.
As I said, I'm happy to discuss this with you offline.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Lauren Court, followed by Frank Lucarelli.
Hi, good evening. I actually heard about this meeting. I live two blocks over, and I have 4 children, and I'm concerned about their welfare. I would get this paper in the mail that said our water is so-and-so within acceptable limits. Pretty much made no sense to me. So then I started, because I was concerned about my children, buying this. And it's very expensive when I'm buying cases and cases every time I go to the grocery store. But you can't put a price on health. My 22-year-old was diagnosed with colon cancer 2 years ago. And I'm not saying that was caused by the water, but it makes you start thinking. And as far as spending the money to have better water, you know, my taxes aren't really unacceptable. I can live with that, but how much you're talking about, is that the answer? Is the water going to continue on the decline, or is what you're saying the solution? And I don't know, how many of you drink bottled water?
No.
No? No.
In fact, there are requirements, the testing requirements
for public drinking water are far superior than the testing requirements for bottled water. They're regulated by two different agencies. So I know everyone thinks bottled water comes from a natural spring in Colorado and it's the best water ever.
Right.
Sure, believe that if you want, but that's an advertising campaign. That's regulated by the FDA. We're regulated by the EPA. So that's an important point to make. I think Joe could probably talk about the specific treatment if you wanted, Supervisor, related to magnesium and iron. That's up to you.
I think that was the prior speaker had asked about the iron and manganese, and I want to make it clear too that the site he was referring to at Jackson Avenue is not related to Wellfield number 4, which is up by Sears Bellows County Park, which is significantly to the north. So there's no connection there, and no groundwater indications that our facility is causing a manganese problem, as the groundwater testing did show over at the sand pit in Bridgehampton area. So, but if you wanted to say something about your testing protocol.
Yeah. I mean, the Water Authority is very familiar with iron and manganese. We've found it in other parts of our water system. And we have just about 30 iron and manganese filtration systems that have been installed over the past 15 or 20 years that essentially take this out of the water. And they're very, very effective. We can deploy them very quickly. We've told the town that we'd probably spend about $2.5 million building one. And the thing is, you know, as I listen to the discussion about the composting and whether the town is impacting this, you know, this is another benefit of the Water Authority. We look at this and we say, our customers are drinking this water, we have to fix it. And we do it. And we don't, you know, we will work with the regulators about where it's coming from and why it's occurring, but our first and foremost job is to remove it from the drinking water. And so we apply the filters and we let the lawyers fight about it later, so to speak, no offense to them. But that's basically what we do. So that's our philosophy. And I think that that's in the public's best interest.
Let me also say too, Lauren, and I understand you're drinking bottled water, and I understand your fears. The manganese, iron, they're naturally occurring elements. High concentrations could be problematic. PFAS is a different issue. You know, PFAS is a chemical that was used in fire suppressant foam, you know, to put out fuel-based fires. It was used in certain products. It is, you know, toxic according to, you know, the advisors we get. We're not supposed to have more than 70 parts per trillion. So imagine a trillion of anything, 70 of them. That's a really very low quantity. And they're talking about actually lowering that to an even lower number than 70. Maybe it's 20 or 14. I hear different numbers being bandied about. And the full effects, we're not really sure in terms of its toxicity. It has immune system effects. It has liver, kidney problem. It's a risk for pregnant women, for elderly, for infants. So, and I'm certainly not an expert on that area, but we are very concerned about that. That's why we did, as fast as we could, we moved to get this activated carbon filtration system in place, and it is working. So we're testing the water as it comes out, and it's not removing some, it's removing all. There's not a trace of it in the water that's coming out of that well field. So, you know, you should be fine drinking your water that, you know, is being provided to you at this point.
So you're going to keep up to date on that, and, you know, as you do more testing, as more people move into the area, as more, you know, toxicity is put into the water. And
one of the things that I mentioned to the town board when we presented to them about a month ago or so, would be if we were able to reach an agreement. And quite frankly, folks, you know, as I mentioned, it's our mission. This is what we do. We're very busy. We have a big service territory. We're dealing with unregulated contaminants. We're testing for things that most folks in this room have never heard of. We want to help. You know, we want to ensure that the folks of Hampton Bays and the residents of Suffolk County are drinking the best possible drinking water. But I think that when you look at what we're testing for and what's on the horizon, we're at the forefront of treating, right? Of treating the water that has these unregulated compounds and doing it consistently. I had mentioned to the town that if we reach an agreement, we would come to the town quarterly, monthly, you know, whenever you wanted, we could come here. We could come to the Hampton Bays Community Center and answer questions about drinking water quality, provide a sort of a specific update. Here are the capital improvements we made. Here are the customer service complaints that we've answered. Here are, you know, other issues that we're dealing with. We would be as accessible to the residents of Hampton Bays and to the town board into perpetuity. We also, we encourage all of you to come and to visit our laboratory, our Motor Parkway in Hauppauge. We were considering, we haven't set the date yet, but we think it's a really good idea to set a date or two in the near future to have sort of an open house and to invite you folks down and to do a tour of our laboratory to see exactly what we do. It's not necessarily open to the public on a daily basis. I wouldn't really encourage you just to stop down and knock on the door, but we're transparent. We're as forthcoming as we can possibly be. Come down, we'll set up a date, maybe we can coordinate that with Frank or the supervisor, and invite you all down to take a look and ask any questions you may have.
Okay. So Lauren, I wanted to also just not to mix issues, but we have a legacy problem. I call it a legacy problem. That's problems that occurred many, many years ago that we're dealing with now. And we worry about that in two ways. So those are the chemicals that were contributed to the aquifer that we're only now pumping up and realizing that there are these emerging chemicals that are new to us, and how to mitigate them is very different. We have runoff issues. So, you know, this town passed the CPF water quality bill, which was the use of the 20% of the funds. That was to try to mitigate those things through replacement of septic systems, infrastructure projects, things like that, not to keep repeating the same mistakes of the past, but we have to still deal with those mistakes of the past. But going on forward, we need to do something else. My biggest fear, and I'm an engineer by profession, my biggest fear is the emerging chemical that we're not aware of. So we've engaged a company to look throughout the entire town of Southampton to try to identify point sources of these things so that we're better able to deal with those. And as you probably know, the way the government regulates chemicals is different depending on the chemical and depending on the jurisdiction. So some chemicals are regulated, some are very tightly controlled, some are obviously classified in different ways. One of the things that impresses me most about Suffolk County Water Authority is that they test for a lot of chemicals, a lot more than I think most standard water districts do. I think that's important. I think that's important to know what's coming before it overwhelms us. So I tend to lean towards technology because I think it's very, very important. When you have a company that has in-house labs, when you have the ability to test quickly, when you're testing for more chemicals, the ability to test for emerging chemicals as they appear and be able to respond to those quickly. I go to the experts. I know what I don't know. I don't know this well enough to be able to say, yeah, this is the answer. So we go to people to help us with those answers. And that's part of this process that we're going through. So, you know, I personally want to assure you, because you know, with my kids, it's the same thing. I was always worried. I'm worried for myself and my wife and my neighbors, but I don't want to be alarmist, but I want to be prepared, and I want to learn what it is and what's the right thing to do with the guidance of people who do this professionally and have done this very, very well over a long period of time. And to protect the taxpayer, to protect all of us, for me, it's the quality of the water that comes first. So I just want to assure you that the people on this board that I work with all have that singular direction as well.
If I could just comment, I know we're sort of going on and on here, but one of the things, and it sounds like we're great, you know, we one of the best in the nation and we can handle anything. We're very proud of what we do, and if I apologize if we're coming across like every single question you're asking, well, what about this, what about that? And we're sort of, hitting it out of the park, answering it, hopefully to your satisfaction. But we are proud of what we do, and we have a long history of doing this, but when it comes to research and development, as Councilman Bouvier announced, talked about, we have a research and development staff in our engineering department that several years ago, it must have been 5 or 6 years ago, I had about 20 of my staff in my boardroom, and we were talking about a compound called 1,4-dioxane, right? 1,4-dioxane, unregulated, right, at any level of government, but it's prevalent across Nassau and Suffolk County and other parts of the nation, but really showing up in numerous, hundreds of drinking water wells in Nassau and Suffolk County. We, at that point, 5.5, 6 years ago, made the determination to develop the treatment, right, to remove that 1,4-dioxane from drinking water, okay? Regular granular activated carbon, which is typical treatment to remove contaminants, not effective with 1,4-dioxane. So, we were alarmed. We're thinking this is something that may be regulated down the road, and if it does happen, we better be prepared to treat it. After 5 years, the Water Authority has the first approved treatment method for 1,4-dioxane. We received national attention. We received awards from across the country because for the first time in New York State, we have the people and the talent and the skills to devote to things like that, to ensure that if the state is very likely to set an MCL on 1,4-dioxane shortly, within the next several months, we'll have the ability to remove it from our customers' drinking water. That's important.
And that's, Jeff, that's not something that's removed by the activated charcoal. Right. So, and Laura, let me just say one last thing. So the carbon filtration that we put in, so the best water in Hampton Bays right now, I believe, is the water coming through those filters. It's removing basically, all the PFAS, PFOA, PFOS. One of the problems, and it's really these guys who brought it to my attention, is those filters are not set up for winter use. So that's got to get shut down when the temperatures drop soon, so that the year-round residents won't get to enjoy that best quality water in the winter, which is a problem, only the summer. So one of the things they put in their $6 million capital program was to build a building around those filters, heated, so that they can operate all year round. Smart thing. We should have done that. We should have done that. That should have been part of our plan. It wasn't brought to our attention. I think we need to do that. Though that's the best water, that should be operating year round. So if nothing else, we've already learned a lot from just having this conversation about some of the improvements our system needs, for health.
Because at this point, we were considering having our in-home filtration system because we weren't sure if
I know a lot of people are talking about this salesman going around Hampton Bays trying to sell reverse osmosis systems and all kinds of things. So, because the people here are concerned.
Right.
I understand. That's why we're having these conversations. Because whatever we do, we have to restore confidence.
Right.
That we can go up to our tap, fill it up with water, and drink it without fear.
And also, if my house is on fire, I want there to be enough water pressure to put it out.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
All right. So Frank Lucarelli. Is Frank here? Frank's in the back. All right. Frank's followed by William Hughes. And that's actually the last card I have. So.
Good evening. 2 quick questions. From what I gather, the Suffolk County Water Authority's mission is to provide the best possible drinking water for everybody, right? So why, instead of taking over the Hampton Bays Water District, don't you work with the commissioners and the Hampton Bays Water District in ways to implement plans and ideas or get grants that we could get our own drinking water without having you come in, and we can leave the local water company with the locals? Really?
That's question one. So why don't we take them one by one? So why could you guys come in instead of as a management team, as a consulting team, kind of guide the current management to make these types of improvements?
So I guess theoretically that would be possible for us to have some type of agreement like that. Typically we don't do that, and the reason for that is we do things much more efficiently if we take over all the activities of the district.
But you're not-for-profit, correct?
That is correct.
So if you're a not-for-profit organization, like the ambulance is not a not-for-profit organization.
That's correct.
We do the best to give as much care and help as you can. So why can't you guys do the same thing with us?
Well, it wouldn't be free. It would have to be a charge for that. And essentially, the best way for the residents is if we used our expertise in all aspects of managing the district. If we just provide it on a carte blanche basis, it may cost you just as much as it would as if you were using H2M or some other engineer.
I'm going back again. You're a not-for-profit, so how much money you want to charge for this service? Then your goal is to supply the best drinking water.
Pardon me?
We're trying to get the best drinking water for the town. Okay, you can help us.
Yes.
So you're not-for-profit, so I mean, you have to make a few dollars, but you don't have to take over the whole organization.
Well, that would be the most cost-effective way of doing it, and that's why it's being proposed like that.
Have you looked at it the other way?
It depends on what you would want, what kind of services you want.
Have you approached the town or the district about
We
that?
have not approached the town. It was the town that approached us.
Well, I mean, have you gone back to the town and said this might be a better way of doing it? We're looking at only one way. It's either you're going to come in and that's it. There's no other alternative. I'm looking at other alternatives, and I think that's a viable way of doing it.
It's something that could be considered. We haven't done it with any other place. If the town wanted to suggest a proposal like that, we would consider it, but I don't think it would be as efficient, it wouldn't be as effective, and it would cost you probably more in the long run.
But it's never been done before, right? So it's always the first time for everything, okay? Second question. You said you would move the base from Hampton Bays to West Hampton. Right, so most of the workers will be working out of West Hampton.
That's correct.
Your emergency workers and everything. What kind of response time will we get out of West Hampton as opposed to having our own base in Hampton Bays? And to give you an example, I had an incident one time where I had a water main break. I called up the Hampton Bays district, told them what was going on, and in 15 minutes I had 2 trucks to help me. Now, if we're out of West Hampton and your guy is in Eastport or Spionk or in the North Shore, how long am I going to be waiting before I'm going to be flooded out and not have service? Now, I'm a fireman and I'm also an EMT. Response time is important. What kind of response time are you going to guarantee the residents of Hampton Bays?
So response time is very, very important to us, all right? And we have metrics that we use to judge our response time. We keep very close track of that, how long it takes a crew to arrive to repair a main break, how long it takes to perform the repair, how long the water is off. We track all of that. But we have people on the road all the time. So it's not just the crews that are in West Hampton that will respond to something that's in Hampton Bays. We have people that are on the road from our customer service department that are out addressing customer service issues. And if a main break comes in, they will respond. So the repair crew doesn't necessarily have to respond, but we need a first responder. So we have first responders on the road, our field operators that are maintaining our pump stations 24/7. They're available to respond immediately when there's a main break of some kind. So they'll respond. They'll put the lights on, they'll put the cones out, they'll do the shutdown if it's necessary. If someone hits a hydrant, they'll shut the branch valve. So we're very, very well versed in response. We've got a 24/7 control center. So when the police call, they get a live body immediately. They tell us where the problem is. We have GPS, we know where all our vehicles are. We call the person that's closest to the break or closest to the problem, and we get them there very, very quickly. We've got a really, really good response time. And it's a hypothetical question because you never know,
You sound a lot like
as you know.
PSEG when you call up PSEG and you get estimated time of arrival,
Yeah,
and it's 20 minutes and an hour and a half later, you're still waiting for them.
Yeah, I can tell you that
because their truck
it's a
is now
different.
somewhere else, and that's my concern.
No, I understand that. I can just tell you that this organization is very focused on public safety. We have a lot of firemen that work for us in the first place, so they're used to being first responders, they're used to responding to emergencies, and it's just in our DNA. When there's a water main break, we are there. And that's the best I can tell you. But again, it's always hypothetical because this is random. I can't predict when a water main break occurs, but I can tell you that there are people ready to go on the street.
Thank you. All right, so we have a couple more. A couple cards came in. We're going to try to wrap this up as quick as possible. We said originally 9 o'clock. It's 9:30 now, so we'll try to get through these last three. And then remember, there is another meeting we're going to have on Tuesday, December 18th at 7:30 right here at the Hampton Bays High School. All right, Bill, good to see you. Bill, you're followed by Mary Pizzan.
Good evening. Bill Hughes from Hampton Bays, and thank you for hosting the forum, Mr. Supervisor. But I must state, I think this is inherently biased. This is inherently biased, and I know you started in the beginning saying that the Hampton Bays Water Authority could be up here, and I'll take you, of course, on your word on that. But I also happened to notice the brochure that went out through the town, the hamlet of Hampton Bays, which in and itself, as we look at it, is very biased and directed to the Suffolk County Water Authority, just by looking at this and reading it. There's been a lot of talk about survey and what it could and could not accomplish. I'd like right now to take a survey of those in the audience by raising your hand and see if you're in favor of keeping the Hampton Bays Water Authority. Could you do that? That's a pretty good survey. Thank you and have a good evening.
Mary Pizzan, followed by Debbie Sharub.
Hi, my name is Mary Pazan. I'm living in Hampton Bays. Question one, how many employees did you say you had currently?
Yeah, we have about, union and management, about 560, 570.
And do you know the breakdown of technical versus
It's about
administrative?
two-thirds union. Two-thirds union, and we expect almost half of our entire workforce to be eligible to retire within the next 5 years or 10 years, 5 to 10 years. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of changeover in
Pensionable overtime is quite a nice thing. I'm not criticizing it, really. Wish I had it. The breakdown, union management, do you know the breakdown of actually technical? Because not all union people are technical, right? So what's the breakdown of technical versus administrative or technical versus management?
I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah.
Are your engineers, are they union as well?
Not
Or they're not a union?
No.
Okay, so going back to a couple of the other points that were made earlier, with respect to the CPI, and again, you used the phrase nefarious lever or something, but I understand that the EIS that was submitted, as well as documents that were submitted in the Supreme Court case, specified that there had to be a hookup to Suffolk County water in order to fix, if you will, the problem of the fire water flow. So what's the status of that agreement? Has that been finalized?
That automated valve that was mentioned, yeah, that is required. It was part of the supplemental EIS. I don't believe it's been installed. They can't get their CO, they can't operate. They're just beginning work on the property itself.
Right. No, the question is, though, that all the representations to the court and the EIS said that SCWA and the town of Southampton were going to enter into an agreement. At an earlier meeting, I'd asked about the agreement, heard there was a draft. So my question is, was the agreement signed? Was the agreement executed?
I'll let the town attorney answer, but there is a valve there now. It's just not automated. So this would be an automated valve that if there's a pressure drop, it comes on. But
right, but that's not what was stated in the EIS, so maybe they overlooked it, I don't know.
The supplemental EIS was prepared and completed. As far as the exact agreement, I'd have to check. I can check with you tomorrow to make sure that it was completed. That was with the planning board. So I'm not exactly sure if everything was completed between the agreements between the Suffolk County Water Authority and Suffolk County and the town, but the supplemental was completed.
So if those agreements are not completed, is that one of the things, or is that the thing that's holding up the commencement of work at the CPI?
Work is being prepared. Work is happening right now. They did the demolition, and I saw it.
Well, I know they did that, but...
Work is there at the site today.
And if the takeover occurs, then this issue goes away for CPI, right, or not?
This has nothing to do with this possible management agreement here has nothing to do with the CPI project at all. One does not have anything to do with the other.
Well, I would beg to differ because this is not really what I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to know if the agreement was signed, but I beg to differ because if they don't take over the water, then you still have to deal with them. And I thought that Reckler had to pay some money for this. That I don't remember. So if this happens, then you don't have to do that agreement with the Suffolk County Water. But what I understand is if the agreement's not done, or if they don't take over, then there's a problem with the, I guess ultimately a CFO or whatever for the CPI.
No, I mean, the agreement with the CPI has nothing to do with the management agreement here. The agreement was really just for a backup.
Right, we can disagree on that because you have to have one or the other. Right. Otherwise,
well, they have the water one way or the other. Whether
all right, that's good. Thank you. I don't have really any complaints about my water in Hampton Bays, with the exception of a few days where it's tasted funny. But otherwise, I really don't have any problem. But I did not, whatever. I worked for the best water utility in the entire world for 5 years. I don't have to tell you who that is. It wasn't you, though. And I learned a lot about how difficult it is, or how technical it is to run a water system. It seems simple, but there's so many computer models, and there's so many advancements, and there's so much technology that's being tested out there that I really do think you have to have the most high-tech, cutting-edge folks and engineering practices employed in your water. I don't want to drink bottled water, and unfortunately it does seem that the Suffolk County Water Authority has a lot more resources to be able to be on the cutting edge of water technology and the cutting edge of testing. I don't like to give up control, and I don't like people to be concerned about their jobs, but I think that the water quality is extremely important. I think there's a lot of issues on Long Island, and I myself hope that you will make the decision that will ensure the best tasting, best quality water for the people of Hampton Bays, especially since I think that in some other decision making, the people of Hampton Bays have been given a short stick. So don't mess us up on our water. Thank you.
All right, last card I have is Debbie Sarubi. Thank you.
Hi, I'll make it really quick. I really just have a statement, not so much a question. I grew up in Smithtown. Hampton Bays is now my home. It's where I plan on retiring. I did send pictures over the summer. It wasn't one day that my water was brown. It wasn't 2 days that my water was brown. I sent them to Bridget Fleming's office, and I do have, copies. It was black, black water. I called the Water Authority, Hampton Bays Water District, and I was told, it's a problem. My neighbors are watering their lawns too frequently. I said, I don't understand how that can be. Can I shower in it? And the woman on the phone said, well, it's dirty water. I wouldn't shower in it. I said, well, when is my water going to be clean? She said, if you want to come down and pick up bottled water, you can come down and pick up bottled water. I said, is this just my road? I live just south of Shinnecock, over by the station. And she said, honey, you're not that special. It's a couple of blocks. So if you're worried about response time, I lived in Smithtown, grew up there. Suffolk County Water Authority is there. I never had a complaint there. I want clean water. I want my children and my grandchildren to come out here and not be afraid to take a shower or a bath. I'd like to make a pot of coffee with the water that comes from my sink. So I vote for, if you had to, I didn't raise my hand to keep the water district, I vote for Suffolk County Water Authority. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
So that's the last card I had. There's going to be lots of other opportunities to comment. You can also take the survey and put comments in there. Tonight's meeting was videoed, so it'll be broadcast over Channel 22 on CTV. The online survey is still available. Go to the town's website for that. There is a copy of tonight's slide presentation that's also going to be available through the town's website. Again, the next public meeting will be December 18th, 7:30 p.m. right here. The board is going to do our best to reach out to get as much information, figure out how to get as much public input as possible. This is obviously a really important decision. I welcome the water district at the next meeting. If you want to get up and take the time to say why, you know, we should stick to things just the way they are, I think it's important for the public to hear that too. So please take that opportunity. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to the Water Authority, Jeff, and to your team for coming out tonight. Thank you, Town Board. And thank you to everyone from Hampton Bays who came out. Very important issue.